I was talking to Aunt Nancy the other day,
Oh, really?
and she told me that when we dropped off Da Vinci,
Uh-huh.
and she said that you would tell, when people ask where you're from, that you were from Baltimore, but you're not really from Baltimore, you were born, or where you were born, rather.
Oh, Northeast Maryland, Cecil County.
Yeah, well, tell me about that. Tell me about the little town where you were born.
The little town,
Or where was it called?
it was called Northeast.
No, there's a specific name of a town where you were born.
Leslie, Leslie.
Okay.
But it was in Northeast, and it was on a farm. And it was absolutely gorgeous. It had a wraparound porch, and you know we had no electricity. We had the wicker lamps that you light. And about 3 miles from the house was an apple orchard. And all the kids we never wore shoes in the summer. We'd all go back there in the apple orchard, and they had like a stone quarry. And you could go down the steps into the stone quarry, and they had all this litter and junk in it. And I was only I had to be under 5 because we moved from there when I was 5. There was a old-time wash machine cover, and I got on it, and I was bouncing back and forth, and this great big black snake come out and scared the living daylights out of it.
Snake, yeah.
But that was fun. And in the back of the house, it was the creek. And of course, it froze over in the winter. And my brothers, if they were sick, my one brother they called it Quincy. I don't know what that is. It's a throat condition. And the older brother had to go down and chop ice and bring it up to the house. And my mother would wrap it up in something and put it around my brother's neck for the Quincy, whatever that is.
Okay. This is Leslie, Maryland.
Yes.
In Cecil County.
Yes.
All right. And then how many brothers and sisters did you have? And what did your parents?
6 brothers and 7 sisters, but 1 sister died at birth. Well, a week or so old, the blue baby.
Okay.
Yeah.
Huh? 6 brothers and 6 sisters. Okay. Now, where were you? Like, what are their names, and where are you in the list of ages?
I'm number 9. It was Lawrence, Edward, Robert, Virginia, Catherine, David, Reese, Margie, Mary, Ruth, Nancy, and Dickie. Dickie was a change of life baby. And I can remember my mother went to the doctors.
What's a change of life baby?
She was going through menopause,
Oh.
and when she was through, she was pregnant at the time. And when you have the baby, your menopause is over. But she had gone to the doctor. My mother had a sense of humor. She went to the doctor for some kind of physical, which they never went to doctors, but she was having problems. And he said to her, "Did you ever have trouble with your period?" And she looked at him, she said, "What period?" She said, "I had 13 children from the time I was married till I went through menopause, so I really didn't have much problems with the period." That was funny. Yeah. Then when we moved from the country, I call it the country, I was 5 years old because I can remember the school, they had a fire escape. In case of an emergency or a fire, you went down a sliding board. And every Halloween, they had this big grass basket of the best looking apples you ever want to see. And we each got an apple. Now, this is things I remember when I was like 4 years old. And we moved to the city when I was 5. And when we went to the city, we were absolutely mesmerized. All these houses were stuck together, and they had a marble step, and we went up the step, and they had a hall with a staircase that went up to the first, second, and third floor, and you come back down the staircase, and if you cut across one of the bedrooms, you went down the back staircase. Well, we were amazed, so we'd go in the front, up the steps, across, down the back, and come out the back and come back into the front. Anyway, one of the neighbors said to another neighbor, "How many children does Miss Brandenburg have?" She said, "I don't know, but I've counted 27 so far." We kept going in and out. And one of the kids in the summer said, "You want to go get a snowball?" And I thought they were pulling my leg because I never heard of a snowball. A snowball to me is you make the snow when it snows, but as far as a snowball, we didn't.
It's a thing that, yeah, you know it, okay.
And what else? We had a good childhood, really. Never hungry, never wore shoes. And when we moved in the city, and when I was in elementary school, and if the soles fell off the shoes, they glued them and all, and then they would, when it started to flap too bad, they would cut it off, and we just went to school with this. We weren't very rich, were we? We had like 2 pairs of socks, and we'd wash them for the next day, and we had many a fist fight because one of the other girls would take your socks and wear them after all the work we put through. Yeah, it was funny. My sister and I must have been 170 pounds when we were in the 7th grade, and there was a doctor across the street, Dr. Weddle.
170?
Huh?
You must have been how many pounds?
170, I think. At 14 or 15, we were in high school.
That's what I weigh. I mean, that's not...
That's fat.
Yeah.
At 14 years old.
Yeah, so you're saying you were that...
And he said, send those girls over, I'm going to put them on a diet. So he gave us diet pills, which was fine. Well, I went on a diet, and my diet consisted, for 2 weeks, I ate 3 oranges every day. Well, at the end of 5 days, I had acne from one end to the other from all the acid in the oranges.
Oh my God.
But we did lose weight. And we used to sit on the front step, 2 fat girls, and we'd go across the street to Tillman's, and they had the big jars of pickle onions. We'd get a pickle onion, a pint of ice cream, and one of the long pretzel sticks, and sit on the front porch and eat it. And Mrs. Downs, who was our neighbor, said to my mother, you're so lucky to have those girls. They are such good girls. They never go anywhere. They just sit on that front porch and mind their own business. And when she left, me and Woochie looked at each other, busted at me, and said, who'd want us at 170 pounds? And then you know what we did for kicks? This is horrible. If my kids did this, I'd kill them. We'd all get together, we'd go up Riverside Park, and we'd find some girls and beat the stuffing out of them for kicks. Isn't that awful?
Understand that?
So yeah.
They would go beat up some other girls for fun.
Yeah. For sport. And when you have 12 children in the family, no matter what happens, this is what you hear. It was probably them damn Brandenburg kids again. Well, the guy 2 doors from me, Gilbert South, I even remember his name. He said something to that, and I tackled him. And I beat the living daylights out of him. And my older brother come over and separated us. He said, that's enough. You're supposed to be a young lady. I said, well, he said we did something to those Brandenburg kids, and I hate that expression. But like I said, for fun, it was in the summer, we had the quart bottles of water and we throw it on each other, and it slipped, and I fell on it and cut an artery. And of course, my parents weren't home. My father was working on the railroad, and my mother was probably shopping or something. So me and that really squirted. I think I almost passed out on the bike. My brother put me on his bike and rode me down to the hospital. And it was an artery I cut.
Jeez. All right, let's back up. Tell me about your parents.
My parents?
I never met them.
My father was a living, I can't cuss, can I?
Yes, I don't care.
He was nasty, I think. He always threw up to my mother because she was pregnant when she got married. He threw that up to her for I don't know how many years. And he was the type was, you wait on him hand and foot. He was the boss and you were like a slave. And she did everything she possibly could for him. And I can remember one morning, and this was up the country, we had a round table in the kitchen, and she fixed him eggs and bacon or something, and the egg wasn't fried right, so he picked up the table and threw everything on the floor. Can you believe anybody like that?
No.
Now, when he got older, he mellowed. He really did. But he used to, I'm not sure because I was a young kid, but evidently he used to beat on my mother.
Wow.
And when the boys were about 15 or 16, they were big fellas. And one day he was beating on her, and they come in, and they clobbered him, and he says, don't ever lay a hand on my mother again. Old man, your beating days are over. So, she did not have a bed of roses.
What's your mom's name?
My mother's name?
Yeah.
That's another story. Her name was Mary Ellen, same as me. I was named after my mother. And when my father died, I was down my mom's buddy's dad, Pop's mother's. And my mother called and said, Mary, you got to come home. Your father's dying and he's calling for you. We went all the way up, And he fell down the steps and did brain damage, and he was kind of out. And I said, Ma, he's not calling for me. She said, yes, he was. I said, well, what was he saying? He kept saying, Mary Ellen, where are you? I said, Mom, what's your name? She said, oh my God, he was calling for me. I said, absolutely. What a bunch of dinglings we were.
She forgot her own name because no one ever called her that?
No, he always called her Elle.
Oh. So
Yeah.
wait, okay, so Mary Ellen, what was her maiden name?
Reese, Reese.
Okay. And do you remember your grandparents on either side?
Oh yeah. My mother's mother, she was evil. She was. I mean, I never did like her. My mother would give us money on Sunday to go up to Utterbine's Bakery and pick up a dozen or so donuts, like for 50 cents. And we'd love to go because the lady behind the counter would always give us a stale cookie. Well, I'd come back with the donuts, and of course my grandmother paid for them. And I would give her the donuts and the change, and she was blind, but she could feel the money. And she said, where's my other quarter? I said, Grandma, I don't have a quarter. She said, there's a quarter missing. Elle! Mary stole the quarter from me. I said, I didn't steal anything from you. And my mother really got mad. She said, my children do not steal. But you know, Denny, when she died, and I had to go view her, and I got so sick I had to go out and throw up in the gutter because I knew I disliked her tremendously, and I guess I was guilt-ridden about it.
All right, how about your mother's father?
My mother's father, I don't remember him at all because my grandmother was married 3 times. Sidney Roberts, who was a pervert. Well, he was. I didn't know it till I got older, but he had stepdaughters by a previous husband of my grandmother, and her name was Kate. And he got her pregnant.
Oh my God.
Well, she was so ashamed, and she didn't know what to do. She was a young girl. She took a coat hanger and opened it up and tried to perform an abortion on herself, and of course she died.
Oh God.
That was Irma's mother, my cousin
Oh,
Irma.
really?
Oh my God.
And then he, in order to make up for it, from the day that child was 8 or 10 years old, he always gave my grandmother money for, out of guilt. He always gave her so much money a month for her. But that whole family were perverts as far as I was concerned. And I had an Uncle Robert, my father's stepbrother.
Uh-huh.
My father's mother was married twice too. Ida Wilson.
What was her name?
Ida Wilson.
Wilson. Uh-huh.
And she was fighting with her husband. And when he went to work, she said, they had a fight. She says, get the hell out. I don't want to see you anymore. I hope you get run over by a train. And he did. Cut him right in half. So she was guilt-ridden too.
Wait.
But anyway, she had 2 children.
Wait, this is who got cut over? Your father's stepbrother was cut in half by a train?
Well, it would be my father's stepfather. It was her
Father's
second
stepfather,
husband.
okay.
Yeah. And she had 2 children by him, and it was Robert and Ellsworth. And then she had my father, who was Lawrence Brandenburg, and my Aunt Isabel, who was Isabel Brandenburg. They were sister and brother, and the other 2 were stepbrothers. And what was I going? And the youngest, Robert, of the 2 brothers, he'd come down to see my mother, and he'd always tried to feel us. We were young kids. And I told my mother, and she told my father. Well, he got really mad that I lied about that too, because it was his family. And his wife, he married his cousin, by the way. He married his cousin, and she took my mother aside one day, and she says, Elle, I don't understand why your girls don't like Robert. He's such a nice man. And she never did tell him why we didn't like him. But we had gone to my mother and told her, what a dirty old man he was. So, we had some childhood. We used to go up to the park for 10 cents, up Riverside Park. We were about 9, 10, 11, and we rent the bathing suit. It was 10 cents a day for admission to the pool, and you got your little gray bathing suit with the number on the back.
You could rent a bathing suit.
Uh-huh. and we'd swim all day. And that's when I started smoking Lucky Strikes in the green pack. So in the bathroom, they had about 6 or 8 little sinks. And I used to stick my cigarettes up in that sink. So every time I went swimming, every week, I'd take another cigarette out. 11 years old.
You did it?
Yeah. And I quit at 55. But at 11, you only got a cigarette a week when you went to the swimming pool.
You can buy them like that.
Yeah.
Go in the store.
And then when we come home from the swimming pool, we were so hungry. And then on Saturday morning, that was really good. My sister Margie, who was very well endowed for her age, she had a boyfriend at the casino movie. And she would go in for nothing. What was that? I forget his name. And then when the usher was doing his business, she would go to the back door and open it and let all the rest of us in for free. And we sit there from like 9 o'clock in the morning till it was time to go home, like 5 o'clock. And we seen everything, and they had all these chapters. They were really cool, man. And then the picture, after seeing it 3 or 4 times, we talked back and forth to one another and tell us, oh, this is the good part where such and such happened. And the people in a couple of rows behind us said, would you please get those kids out of here? We come to see this movie, and they're telling us. A Freddie Fee Case, that was the name of the usher. Cool, I got a good long-term memory.
Wow. And what theater was this?
What theater?
Yeah.
Casino on Light Street. It's long gone. There was a casino, and then up further was the McHenry Theater. And down on Charles Street was the Garden Theater. It was 3 of them.
Okay, so now you guys moved from the farm in Cecil County.
Yes, to Baltimore City, 1314 William Street, and we lived there till I was in high school, the 12th grade, and then we moved to Linthicum.
Okay, and where in Linthicum did you move to?
Greenwood Road.
That's with your whole family, or who?
Well, who was left? A lot of them was married.
Okay, wow.
We moved in with my sister and brother-in-law.
I thought you lived on Hull Street. Is
Hull-
William Street in Locust Point?
No, William Street's up the hill.
Up the hill, what is that?
They used to call the people that was past the bridge that they were up the hill. You didn't break the chain, you know. You didn't go in that section. You stayed down Locust Point with the classy ones. We were like the scum.
Scum,
Like low-class people. But if the truth was known, it was just the opposite.
yeah, but the class A law.
No, we lived on William Street. And Buddy lived on Woodall Street, which is down Locust Point.
Okay, so what neighborhood would William Street be considered now?
It's South Baltimore.
Okay.
You know what? We never locked our doors. We never had any problems with people breaking in. And every Christmas, we would all get a pair of roller skates. And we would roller skate up and down the streets and play, like it'd be 5 of us in a row, and then we'd swing around like that. It was fun. And play balls and jacks on the front porch, on the marble steps. That was neat. We really liked that. And then one Christmas, we get a coloring book. A cutout book with all the dolls with their clothes. I used to love that because I used to dream they were my clothes, you know. And we had the radio. I'm telling you, these kids nowadays missed a lot. We used to sit around the radio because there was no TVs. And we used to listen to The Shadow and Quick as a Flash. Well, The Shadow was really scary. It was Lamont Cranston was his name. And the show was so scary, I almost wet myself from fright. Just imagining things in your mind.
That's where that and the shadow do.
Oh yeah, I've heard something like that in the shadow knows. Something like that.
No. What evil lurks in the heart of man?
There
The
she goes.
shadow knows.
She's got it. That's exactly what they said.
Well, you know, when we first got married, that was 49. We both worked and saved, I think it was, $19 for that little red Philco?
Yeah.
It took us a year to save that $19 to buy that little red Philco radio.
How long?
About a year.
Wow.
But what did you make, Bud? $35 a
60
week.
cents an hour.
$25 a week. And when your mother was born, I spent $9 for an order. And that was with baby food. I was frantic. You know, I spent all that money. Bud's going to be so mad at me.
$9 for baby food?
$9 for the whole order,
Oh, okay.
which included baby food.
Okay, I want to make sure I got your parents. So back to your parents for a second. So your dad worked for the railroad?
He was an engineer on a B&O. He'd be gone like 3 weeks at a time.
Where did you meet your mom?
Where did he meet my mother?
Yeah.
I have no idea. And I did not know that they were married. We lived on 1314 William Street, and on the corner was the Methodist Church, and that's where they were married, at that Methodist Church. And I didn't know that until Aunt Carolyn, Buddy's sister, was checking the family history, and she checked that, and my Aunt Carrie stood for them.
So they were still living at the farm in Cecil County, but they came down to William Street to get married.
Yep.
Or they came down to. Yeah.
Well, I think my mother's people were from South Baltimore when she was single.
Do you know when they came to America? Do you know who was
My father?
Yeah, well, who were the ones? I mean, I assume they're Germans. The Reese is probably English or something. Right?
Yeah, I think so.
Who were the ones? Do you know?
In Germany.
Who were the ones who first came off the boat? Do you guys have?
I don't know, but it was 6 brothers. My father used to tell the story, and they went to different parts of the country. And my father's family, one of the 6 brothers, went to Martinsburg, West Virginia. So they used to call them the West Virginia Brandenburgs.
Okay.
But I don't know where the other ones went, but it was 6 brothers.
So your father was one of those 6 brothers.
I would imagine, yeah.
So you don't know where all those other family members are?
I know there was a lot of Brandenburgs in Linthicum, in that area, when I got older.
And your mother's family? What do you know about
They
that?
were Reese's. I'm trying to think. I know she had a sister-in-law that I don't like her either. She came to the house. These things that stick in your mind as a child, you wouldn't think they registered, but they do. My mother and my Aunt Maggie and some of the other ones, I think one of the girls was getting married, and they were cutting up this, my mother was cutting up the celery and all for the tuna fish, and my Aunt Maggie said, "Al, you're doing that all wrong. For God's sake, can't you do anything right?" I got so mad at her. I said, "Don't talk to my mother like that. She's doing a fine job." That old witch.
Your mom sounds pretty cool.
Huh?
Your mom sounds like she was pretty great.
Yeah, she was.
Oh, Elle was good.
She was nice.
All right.
She used to go out with his mother. They'd go get a couple beers and be drunk.
Yeah, so Pop, tell me about where you grew up and your parents. I've met your parents. I mean, I remember my mom and Papa Brown.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, right.
But tell me about that. Like, where did you grow up? In Baltimore?
Where was?
Up
Yeah,
the-
not my parents, but
You were up the farm a lot, weren't you, Bud?
yeah. But it would be my grandparents. They had a farm up in what's the name of it? Old Court Road.
Uh-huh.
Are you familiar with that?
Yeah.
My grandmother on my father's side, she ran the house with some brothers. He had Uncle Herman and what was the other one?
Uncle Mox, Uncle Herman.
Uncle Mox. Yeah, he was a boozer, but he was a good carpenter, you know. But anyway, but that's what started. And my father and mother had 6, 3 and 3 children, and all born and raised in South Baltimore. You know, your father. You remind me. I'm thinking of how they used to spank your. I understand he would send when you lived up the country. He'd send your father would send one of the boys out to get some type of switch
Get
when
what?
Elle got back or he got back.
A switch, like a stick.
You know.
Oh, they would cut it off and then he could beat him.
But anyway, then no electricity and stuff like that. So you had ice boxes with a hunk of ice, burnt coal. You used to
Are
have
you
a
talking
chute.
about William Street, or are you talking about up the
Talking
country?
about Woodall and Towson Street.
Oh yeah, you put a sign in the window, how many pounds of ice you want.
And
So what?
that's how you had the central heat. one register on the floor on the first floor, maybe 2 feet diameter. So you had to keep getting stoking the fire to keep warm in the house.
That's my house that I renovated in Westport. It's probably 100 years old, and it has that. It has like a big grate
That's it.
in the floor, on the first floor.
If you followed that down into the basement, you'd find it
Cellar.
had some type of stove
Yeah.
or something for the heat.
So okay, so but back up. So what house did you grow up in? Like where? Do you remember the address or what street it was on?
Reynolds Street,
Rental Street.
yes.
That's
That's when I was little. I was shipped up to the farm. I
They
guess
got
when
rid
I
of
was
him.
3, 4 years old, and spent the summer up there. But then they come back into town. Yeah, I started first grade. You know, can't think of the. 76 was the school we went to.
down
And
Locust
my
Point.
father, at that time, he had a convertible Ford or Chevy, I forget which. And every once in a while, he'd gather up a bunch of kids with some pennies. You could get $1 worth of gas. It's 5 gallon.
What did they call that? The blue something, didn't they, bud?
Yeah, the blue, it was a blue thing. And he loaded up with, take the kids for a ride around the neighborhood. And we lived right next to the farm. I mean, playground, what do you call it?
Yeah.
And I did the farm bit. I was probably 14, 15 years old before I finally came in and didn't have to go out and work on the farm.
Wait, whose farm was it? Is that whose farm?
Farm was my father's mother.
Okay.
They were right from
Yeah.
Germany. They didn't speak English.
Really?
Yeah, my grandmother never spoke English.
What was her name? Gudelsberger? Or?
Yeah, hey, it was something like that.
Yeah.
So what would you do on this farm?
Farm.
What kind of farm was it?
Oh, it was only 20, I think it was 27 acres.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, it was for their own food, which they did. And then on Saturday, Uncle Mox, he would take me with him. We'd go in town and sell the vegetables off the back of the truck.
Like a huckster.
Huckster, you know.
That's
And
And he
speaking
used to
about
go out and pick the corn when he was 4 years old, and they
speaking-
couldn't find him. They'd go out and he'd stuffed his mouth so full of corn he'd fall asleep in the rows of corn. He's a fat
Yeah,
man.
they only you had your pot when you went upstairs. There was no heat at all in the house. And
Is that
of
Aunt
course
Rose,
it was
the farm?
papered. It was papered with the sun paper and any other paper. That's what they used to glue it on the wall.
That was their wallpaper.
That was the wallpaper.
Now, nobody liked her, very few, but I thought she was the greatest thing.
Aunt
Like-
Rose.
My Aunt Rose.
His Aunt Rose. That was Mr. Neiman's sister.
Okay, wait a minute. So you're going to this farm. So your parents are living in the city and they're sending you to the farm to work.
What's that?
So your parents were living in the city and then you'd have to go to the farm to work.
I would go
Well-
out on the farm and stay there. in
Yeah,
the
but you went
off-season
on that
from
farm when
school.
you were young, bud.
Yeah. And I was
You weren't
young.
working
Yeah, I
at
stayed-
3 years old.
I stayed till I was about 14 or so, and then I didn't have to go anymore.
But this wasn't that far away, just Old Court Road, right? That's
Yeah.
not-
Yeah, right, 15, 20 miles.
Okay. That's funny. Now that's
Liberty
far.
Road. We used to take. We had one horse, 2 mules, and a couple of cows. Now the horse, you had to get new shoes put on.
Uh-huh.
You had to ride him from up Old Court Road, and what's the road that goes across it? It's popular, but anyway, that's where the blacksmith was.
Did you learn
You
to
used-
drive your car up there in the fields?
No car. You ride the horse.
Yeah. No, I meant you learned.
So you used to ride a horse around the farm?
You did if you wanted to go get it up the road.
Wow. Okay, so and your grandmother is from Germany, or your grandparents?
Grandparents.
Wow. Do you remember? Wow, that's incredible.
Gwinsenberger, what the hell?
I was up there. It was in summertime, maybe early fall, and I come down one morning and she was sleeping on a daybed. I didn't know it at the time, but she died prior to that.
Yeah.
But that was when she died, while I was up there.
Okay, so what year would this have been? Like, when would they have come?
Probably in 30s,
Okay.
mid 30s.
So this was during the Depression, this era, this stuff you're talking about. You guys grew up in the.
I was born in
Oh,
the
yeah.
Depression, 1930.
You were born 1930.
That was Depression year.
Yeah.
He was 27.
10, 29, 27.
So you were born. So you were born just before the big crash.
27,
Right.
yeah.
Because the crash was like in 29, right?
Yeah.
How do you know that?
I read books.
Okay.
But you know, we weren't aware of a depression. We lived on the farm. We ate good. You know.
I never had money in my pocket. I don't remember even having money.
That's incredible. But okay, so.
But we would go to the same movies that me mom did.
The same what?
Movies.
Oh, yeah. Didn't have that many to choose from.
Right.
What are some movies that you remember? Do you remember any movies that you made an
Uh,
impression?
5 or you know what they did have at least every Saturday, they had the serials.
Flash Gordon.
Flash Gordon, and whatever. And you see 5 or 10 minutes of it, and you'd have to come back next week.
What's
to
the one
see
of
it
the jungle?
continuing.
Shannon of the Jungle, I think it was.
But we got in the same way that Mary did. As a matter of fact, I delivered pamphlets.
That's where I met Pop
Tell me about this.
when I was little. I was like 14, I guess he was 17. He was coming up the aisle in one of the movies, and I was coming down. And we were running together, and then we moved this way, that way, this way. And I took him by the shoulders. I said, "Tell you what, you just stand still, and I'll walk around." Yeah.
So you met.
But I had seen him
Yeah.
when he was in the hospital. Me and Pearl got it. Used to go visit the people in the hospital, kill time. And he was in there getting his appendix taken out. What about at 14 you were? So I was 11.
I was a little older than that appendix.
And I
but-
said to Pearl, "That's the guy I'm going to marry." Now, you know, that's weird.
But I went down to the inner harbor right at the end of our street, and we used to swim there. Well, I slipped this one time, and I hit my head. So I had a fractured skull.
I thought you were swimming.
I was swimming, yeah, I said. And
Dove into a
that was right
pond.
where the harbor tugs, all of them used to pull up to the pier and park their what's names, and we swam across this little cove.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, we all swam in the inner harbor. I mean,
Yeah.
why go any further? It's right there.
Yeah, but you went home.
Oh, I did. I almost passed out the next morning.
Yeah, before they
Lost my
discovered.
equilibrium from the head.
So you actually fractured your skull?
Yes.
Fractured skull, yeah.
So what did they do after they figured out your skull was fractured?
Well,
Tried
it was
to
in the
straighten you,
hospital.
take it out. No. No, they put first they make an incision and see where the drainage is. And what do you call them when you put like a piece of gauze or so you can pull it out and change it?
Oh, like a dressing, something
Yeah.
like that. Yeah. Oy.
When we were little, we used to go across. There was no Hanover Street Bridge yet. It was something else. And when the pond froze over, we used to go swimming there. and I was the heaviest. So they
Wait,
all
the pond? You mean the bay where Hanover Street Bridge?
no, it wasn't Hanover Street Bridge. It was just water.
Okay.
So I'd go out to see how thick the ice was. Well, of course I fell in, and I went back to shore, and we walked all the way over Hanover Street back to my house on William Street. I was frozen, of course, and I said to Ma, I fell in. She said, well, any stupid idiot that goes across to test something ought to fall in. Now, you know that sympathy. So I opened the stove and put my feet there till I dried off a little bit.
Oh my god. Okay, so I'm unclear about when you guys actually met, and I guess it was in Locust Point, right?
Actually, it was South Baltimore in a movie. It was McHenry, I think. Wasn't it by the McHenry Theater?
Yeah, McHenry.
McHenry. We met.
And how old were you back then?
16,
13 or
17.
14.
13, 14.
13, 14 for you, and 16, 17 for Pop?
Yeah, but then he went with a guy, this is later on. I was like 16, and we used to go walk up and down Ford Avenue. And he was going with Dave Leister, and they used to cruise up and down Ford Avenue. And this is really weird. His license number was 179-606. And every time I seen that car, I said, oh, there he is, I'm going to marry him. And then my sister dated his friend Dave Leister, and Dave introduced Buddy to me, and that's when we started going together.
And what happened to your sister and Dave Leister?
Nothing. They just dated a couple times, and that's it. He never did get married, did he, Bud?
Dave? No.
Huh?
No. Never did. He's living with his sister now, I believe.
Huh. Never got married.
Mm-mm. Handsome boy, too. Nice looking guy.
And the car license plate, you remember that was his car?
179-606. It was green, wasn't it, Bud? Like a,
Yeah, it was hand painted.
I think it was a Chevy.
With a brush.
How can you do that? Is that legal?
You just open a can of paint. Why not? It's your car. Once you
He
pay
always
for
drove with his arm out the window.
it. The
cool man.
cars. When I come back out of the service, which was in 66. I think it was 66. But anyway, they didn't have any cars. They had already switched to be making army stuff for the war back then.
No, wait, that was 46,
So
right?
they didn't make cars. They didn't have a 1945 or 46 or somewhere in there. It was 2 or 3 years they skipped
During the war.
during the war. They didn't have a new automobile.
Uh-huh.
So consequently, I bought a used automobile, and I paid more for the car then that was already 2 or 3 years old than it cost when it was brand new, because it was so hard to get a car.
Wow.
When we moved, we were married and had Barb. And maybe Dad. You didn't have a car then when we moved to Brooklyn. You used to have to walk down, catch the bus into Procter & Gamble.
Yeah, and she would take the kids, go to the store, grocery store, get on the bus, come home. Jeez, you know.
When did you do this, Bud?
That was,
When did you go to the grocery store with the kids?
I didn't.
I know you didn't, because I used to put it in a baby carriage
Talking about you.
and walk down to the market. One was in the baby carriage and one was laying flat, and his mother was sitting up in the back. Because his father wouldn't take me to the store.
Well, he was going to Procter & Gamble to work.
Huh?
He had to go to work.
Not us, his father lived
Oh,
next
his
door to
father.
us.
Okay, so, and what did your parents do for a
What?
job?
My parents?
Yeah.
My father, he was, I guess you would call him an iron worker.
Uh-huh.
He worked some up in New York. I wasn't familiar with too much of that, I just know. And then he worked at Baltimore, what's the name of it?
He ended up in Maryland Dry Dock.
Maryland Dry Dock. That's where he got there, and then I took up an apprenticeship a couple years later and served my machinist apprenticeship.
Okay, so he was working on making ships or repairing ships?
Repairing it.
Okay.
It was repairing.
And then so then you apprenticed there, and then you went on to work at Procter & Gamble after that?
No, had a couple other jobs. in there.
Continental,
Yeah,
Maryland Continental, or what? Over in Essex.
What's the chemical? Davidson Chemical.
Uh-huh.
Davidson Chemical, and then you said, you come home one night and said, I'm going to quit this job because I'm trained to be a machinist, and I'm not wasting my 4 years of apprenticeship and all. So I went to Procter & Gamble's to be a machinist. And they didn't have anything open at the time, so he did cleanup work, mopping floors and all. For about a year, wasn't it, Bud?
Yeah.
And then he got his
Yeah, he
machinist
was.
job.
Back then, you had to take a test. Yeah. Make sure you can make the lathe turn around. But anyway, yeah.
Right, so
And
machinist.
then went down there. We wasn't down there 6 months, maybe a little longer. And Meem used to bring me down dinner. Sliding underneath.
He worked shift work, 11 to 7, 3 to 11 to 7 to 3. When he was on 3 to 11, I used to I was such a good wife, put the kids in the baby carriage, pack his lunch, and then walk down, go down to Procter & Gamble, and take his lunch, and he'd be working out on those, what do you call them big smokestack things? And I'd throw his lunch over the fence.
Yeah, I worked for the Tide unit, which is, they just put that up in 1950. And so everything was brand new. It's good. It's a good job.
And my 2 brothers worked there. Your father worked there, Procter & Gamble's.
He did? Doing what?
Yeah, your dad did. Him and Jim.
Oh,
Whaley.
Mr. Jim? Yeah, I remember Mr.
Jim Whaley. Both of them.
Who else, Bud?
Jim Whaley.
Remember Mr. Jim, crazy Mr. Jim, my dad's friend?
Yeah. Denny used to work 8, 10 hours, whatever. And then he'd get in the car and go to school or something. Anyway, one day he had an accident on Poteet Street, ran against, fell asleep in the car.
Who was that?
Denny,
Oh, damn.
when he was working
Yeah.
at P&G.
Oh, yeah.
I said, boy, you're going to kill yourself if you don't stop working that
All
much.
things he took down a 4x4 post, I think it was, with a sign on it. I don't remember what the sign was, but
I always liked Denny. Always. He was, one day I got up and he's in the backyard. He must have been there all night sleeping on a Chase lounge waiting to see Barb.
Really?
And she didn't care for him a little bit. I said, Barb, he is the nicest young man. She says, you like him so much, you marry him.
Wow.
I always throw that up to her too.
Right, he was a good looking kid too, right?
Yeah. So was Barb.
And a Corvette.
Barb was a little lady. Young lady. I told you the story about, I was a mean mother. Barb was meticulous.
Yeah,
I mean, meticulous. When she went to school, she had her clothes ready for the week. And she would take, they didn't have steam irons. She'd take an iron and put brown paper on her sweaters and iron them so it had a real sharp crease in it. And she'd have it laying on the bed. Well, this one day, Deb wore her sweater to school. Well, I was working at school then, and I was going through menopause, and I had the worst headaches. I come home and they're fighting about that sweater. I said, what in the world's going on? Ma, she wore my sweater to school today, and they were bickering back and forth. Well, my head was about to bust. So I said, give me the GD sweater, and I took a pair of scissors and cut that sweater in half, and I said, there's a piece for you and a piece for you. Now shut up, I got a headache. Okay. And another time, Pop got off at 4 o'clock. He was home at 4:30. At 4:30, dinner was on the table. We all sit down and ate. And I said to the kids, do not put your school books on that table and do your homework. If you do, make sure it's done by 4 o'clock so I can get dinner on the table. You know your father's home at 4:30, wants to eat dinner. He was spoiled too, wasn't he? Well, one day it was pouring down raining, and I went in to cook dinner, and all the books were on the table. I just was proud of myself. I picked them all up, opened the back door, and threw them all on the lawn. They cried about that too. I said, I told you 3 times not to put that on the table. That was a mean mother, you know?
Discipline. You know what's funny is how that stuff, like the neatness stuff, translates through the generations.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I don't have it as nearly as bad as you or my mom, but I mean, compared to her, I still have it sometimes. Like it really.
She was
irritates me.
always, even her, she used to buy clothes, and it was all the brand names, like Act 3 and Villager clothes, but they cost quite a bit of money in them days. And we would buy their clothes, but we could never afford that. So I'd say, we'll give you what we would pay. We'll give you the money, and then if you want to get what you want, just earn the money. And that's what they do. They would get it. They got a job. And your mother was in high school, and she used to ride. She worked for. He was a senator. He turned out to be a senator. She worked for him. She'd come from school and she'd go in the underpass, and Danny would always meet her there with the car and say hi and all, get a kiss or something. Then she'd go to work.
How long did my parents date before they got married?
If she was in 10th grade, I think, or 9th, and he was in the 11th, or she was in the 10th and he was in the 12th. I don't remember. But I don't think it was a senior because she went to his junior prom. Okay. And some of the guys he palled around with says, we know a girl that likes you. And he says, well, I'm not dating somebody I've never seen. So the girl she was with got her to stand up for some reason so he could give her the eye and see what she looked like. And being she was acceptable.
So wait a second. She liked him, but then he got interested in her, and then she wasn't interested in him.
Yeah, well, he was so attentive, and young kids find that smothering.
Oh. Now that makes sense.
Yeah, when he was going with Barb, he had a nice, what was it, 55 Chevy? Mm-hmm. That was, it was his pride and joy.
210 series.
And they stole it. Somebody stole it while he was down in our house.
Parked at the side of the house.
I mean, he got it back, but
This was
He was a little
place
perturbed.
on Nancy Avenue?
yeah, he was a little perturbed.
We lived there 55 years.
How many?
55.
All right, so back up a second. I want to hear about the neighborhood. I remember Pop telling me once where there were certain neighborhoods you couldn't walk past, like the Italians would beat up the Germans or something like that. Like, what was the scene like in the neighborhood?
They had to be Locust Point where all the hoods were.
Yeah, they're groups. They'd hang together, and you didn't want to go.
Called gangs.
Yeah, you didn't want to go past a gang, so to speak, with not enough manpower. So
they would just beat you up for fun? Like, if they see you by yourself and there's...
Right, that's territorial. That's their territory,
While we were beating up the girls in the park, they were down there.
Yeah, she's up Riverside Park playing King of the Hill.
He was down Locust Point. That's funny.
But
we never fought as a gang. It did more damage playing sports.
Yeah.
Soccer. But he's
Soccer.
had more busted knees, broken legs from playing soccer and baseball, and
Yeah, you used to really love soccer, right? Wasn't that your sport?
Yeah, I did.
he was
I
good.
really liked it. I played it till I was 36.
Wow. Where?
Oh, it's local in the city. No, that's the other thing with sports. They didn't have the organizations like they do now.
Mm-hmm.
You would just go out and start
Different
getting enough
parks.
till you got 11 guys. Say, okay, we'll go down and sign up with this league. Yeah.
They played Pompey in East Baltimore. They were, wow,
Yeah, and it
bloodthirsty.
beat us by 1 goal every damn year. But it's funny. One of the guys that played for Pompey and I played against it, his son is on the what's the Baltimore Washington
Baltimore, Washington.
Professional soccer.
Okay.
Keep forgetting the MSL.
Mhm.
So his son is. So I
Who was
tried
that,
to catch
bud?
him. Huh?
Who was that?
It's Tom Quaranta was the father, and the son was named Johnny Quaranta, and he plays on the DC United. He's still there. He's still on there. He's been there like 4 or 5 years now.
That was a rough sport. You had 45-minute halves, didn't you? A lot of running.
15-minute half.
So-
45-minute quarters. I mean halves.
Was soccer more popular back then than it is now in the U.S.?
No.
Because it's like
Some years you'd have 3 clubs. Some you'd have 5. Never the same way twice. You know.
But was soccer as popular as football or baseball back then?
It's getting there.
I know it is now, but back then.
Yes.
Right. we didn't have 1,000 people in the neighborhood when we played.
When Conway Bachelors, and aren't they the one that sponsored the soccer team?
Yeah, Conway Bachelors, what?
She had a store, Conway's store, and they called the guys, the Conway Bachelors.
And we
Like
even
Buddy and your mother's godfather, he was a teacher at where you were, Madonna.
Right? He ran the
McDonald.
field house, I think. Yeah, I know
He was a
that.
phys ed teacher.
What happened to him? Is he still around?
Yeah. Ed Novak's still living, isn't he, bud?
who?
Ed.
Ed's
No.
still living, to mine, as far as I
Yeah.
know.
Tell me about. I'm always curious about the like ethnic parts of the neighborhood. I mean, it used to be, I know that Baltimore used to have like a Polish community, and the Germans have got that church right downtown where they had. I photographed a wedding there, the Zion Lutheran Church, right like near City Hall, and they had a German inscription.
They went to the German Lutheran Church in
Right.
Lucas Point.
That's what they would be, area. Didn't
But-
make a team.
Okay, but then when okay, so like, do you remember like there being like Polish section of town or like in Fells Point?
Westport was the Polish people up in South Baltimore,
Really, Westport.
across the Austin Street Bridge. Is that Westport? Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, Westport's that's where I have my other house now.
That's where all the Polish people live
Okay.
that went to Southern High.
And how about Little Italy? You remember Little Italy being very Italian when you?
Oh, they were very
That's where he
Italian.
played Pompey.
That's where Pompey
That's
was.
Pompeii, Our Lady of Pompeii.
Okay.
They had a good club. They were good soccer players.
Oh yeah.
And then there was a Jew. There's that right near there. There's a part of town that I know must have been Jewish because there's still some. There's like a couple synagogues and there's Atman's Delicatessen. Do you know that area?
Further towards which way?
From Little Italy, just a little bit north.
Near the morgue, wasn't it, bud?
A little bit north. I'm trying to think of the area.
It's like right just north of Little
Where did we have that fight and you got your dress torn getting out
Patterson
of
Park.
there? Patterson Park.
Oh no, that's way.
There, that's
Yeah,
Eastern
that's-
Avenue.
Okay. Well, or like when did all the black people come into the city? Like when did that happen?
We used to have riots when I was in Southern High School.
Uh-huh.
They would get together and they'd have the blacks and the whites.
Uh-huh.
Somebody would have a fight, and then we would plan to have a race riot.
Oh my God.
And you had all the blacks on one side of Montgomery Street and all the whites on the other side. And
I
they
was
really
just-
came to fisticuffs, too. They had the police there at one time breaking it up.
But when did but when you like now the city is like predominantly black. Was it predominantly black when you guys lived?
No, the
We-
blacks lived down there near past Charles Street.
What do you mean, Pat? Where past Charles Street? On
Ray Street and that area.
Ray Street.
Where Reed's Drug and Chemical Company was. They lived over the Austin Street Bridge part.
That's it. Yeah, I couldn't
And if you
think
go
of the name.
further over to it's Westport too. It was the blacks and then the Polish people in that neighborhood. And then of course they come right into South Baltimore.
And how about like over in on the east side of Baltimore? Did you ever
On the what side?
east
East Baltimore, like Eastern Avenue and all. You know, I don't remember just Italians there. I don't remember any black people.
We got the Patapsco branch up there, and that's a dividing line for going north and east, really.
What was that, Bud, the dividing line?
The water goes up to Light Street.
Oh, yeah.
So you're talking about all this. I guess maybe back then there weren't as many houses. It wasn't all developed. Like, cause now, you know, you look at a map of Baltimore and like northwest and northeast Baltimore, it's just houses
Right.
forever.
No.
Like north. Like what
I
was
think William Street was like 10 blocks total from one park to Federal Hill.
How about like you remember North Avenue and Druid Hill Park, that area of Baltimore?
North Avenue's where
Sure.
his aunt
Used
had
to have to take a streetcar everywhere we went.
Uh huh.
Boy, the fumes from those streetcars made you deathly sick.
Wow. Well, like I remember, like North Avenue seems like, I mean, it's kind of crappy now, but it has big houses. You could tell it used to be like where rich people lived or something.
Right.
Or the grand. Like
Wasn't North Avenue where your
Right
Aunt
up the
Rose
road
had
from
her?
you.
Huh?
You're not that far from the kind of neighborhood. If you come out of your house and take a left,
Uh huh.
you don't have to go up there too far. Where you got some, used to be nice. I don't know what it is now.
Oh well, Roland Park is still very nice up there.
Roland Park, okay.
Yeah, that's still
What
you're
did it
right,
used to
very
be,
close.
Bud?
Huh?
What did you say it used to be?
But Roland Park was a really nice neighborhood.
Oh yeah, that's Ritzy Ditzy.
And
Well, that still is, but there are other neighborhoods like over by Druid Hill, like Reservoir Hill.
Mm-hmm.
It's not nearly as nice now. It's a little run down, but that's also an area where you can tell like they're like big, huge townhouses that are beautiful, but they're kind of
Yeah,
run
that's
down,
where
broken into apartments. Where
Mr. Bittner, the store I used to work for on the corner, Pop Bittner, he would take the girls from my neighborhood that worked for him over to his house, and that's where he lived in Roland. And they had a great big house with a lot of ground.
Oh, that area is still beautiful.
Yeah.
I would love to investigate some of those houses.
I worked for him when I was, 11 or 12?
yeah,
And I was a good worker. They had candy.
Mhm.
And every now and then, me and Wootsy would steal some candy. And he got me one day, said, Mary, I noticed some candy was missing when I was taking inventory. He said, did you take any? Well, shit wouldn't have melted in my mouth. I said, oh, Mr. Bittner, I would never do that. That's stealing. He said, I didn't think it was you. And then I went home and dumped my shoes out where all the quarters. I stuck in my shoes, waiting on the
God.
customer. Oh, what a hood.